Hello and welcome to this episode of Building Better Teams, the podcast dedicated to exploring principles, strategies, and stories behind successful team dynamics. I'm your host, Robert, and I'm thrilled to have you, our guest today. It's the President and CEO of Iredell County Economic Development Corporation, a public-private partnership and full-service economic development organization responsible for business attraction, existing industry expansion, workforce development, marketing, and community development across Iredell County. Our guest is also the managing director of the South Iredell Community Development Corporation, a nonprofit organization that oversees the development, sales, and marketing of the Mooresville Business Park East, 450-acre industrial business park in Mooresville, NC. She joined Iredell County in August 2019 and developed a comprehensive economic development strategy which has resulted in 104 new and expanding announcements, resulting in the creation of 4,600 new jobs, 1.9 billion with a B capital investment, the creation of 11.1 million square feet on new industrial development product. She was awarded the Most Admired CEO 2023 award by the Charlotte Business Journal. An amazing accomplishment, certainly worthy of congrats. She currently serves as the board member on the Centralina Economic Development Council and Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina's Economic Development Advisory Council, and 2023 chairman of the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, or CRBA, Economic Development Advisory Council. She received her Bachelor's of Arts degree in Communications and Public Relations from Towson University and is a graduate of Oklahoma University's Economic Development Institute. She is a licensed NC real estate broker and a certified economic development professional as recognized by the International Economic Development Council. She has 3 sons, 9, 13, and 15, and lives in Iredell County with her husband. Are you ready to meet today's guest? She is Jen Bozer.
That's right. So I get a quarter for every time you said economic development.
Economic Corporation Development.
Sorry for all the words.
No worries. Thank you so much, Jen, for being here with us today. Certainly an impressive laundry list of accomplishments.
Thank you for having me here today.
You're very, very welcome.
Yeah.
We're so pleased to discuss today. We're planning on discussing, for those watching, we're planning on getting right into it here with recruiting and hiring for teams, the importance of it, how you've done it, as well as building a team culture. So here on this podcast, that's what we're always talking about, things related to team building, but today that's kind of our focus. Mm-hmm. So looking at your background and where you've come from in terms of all of the things that have led you to this point, how did you come to this point in your career, and how has team building been a part of it?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, thank you for having me on the show, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think throughout my career, I've been blessed to work with a diverse group of people. Started my career in DC. Have worked in the hospitality field, worked in Raleigh, having some small teams, some larger teams. I think in economic development, you work with a wide variety of people. So while you have team members that are your immediate coworkers and staff, you also have an extension of a network of people that you work with that are, in essence, part of your team. Because in economic development, you're trying to work towards, leveraging different expertise and experience and strengths of the people around you to address the questions and needs of your client. But I think for me specifically with my team, with the people that I have worked with over the years, I think one of the core elements of having diversity on your team. People that think differently than you. You don't want to hire everyone that thinks like Jen. I don't want to hire everybody that has the same strengths as me. or weaknesses me. And I recognize that there are things that I'm good at, and there are things that I'm not as strong in.
Yeah.
So, when you're putting together a team, you want to make sure that you're thinking through what are the seats on the bus and who are the right people to fill them. And sometimes that means changing people from one seat to the other when you have people leave or move because it's a better fit for that person,
Yeah.
or you may need to hire a new skill set to come in because you're changing as an organization. And we recently did that with moving one of my long-term employees had been our research analyst, and she also has a skill set in operations, but she is a much better operations person because she's very black and white. I call her Eagle Eyes because she always finds all the errors and everything. She's a deadline-driven person, and I think sometimes it wasn't easy for her initially to make that move, but I think she's much happier now because that's where her strengths are.
Yeah, but you were able to kind of identify that, and that might be one of the challenges for somebody who's maybe they're watching and they're trying to pick up some nuggets from this conversation. I think just to kind of break down some of the things that you had said, you were looking and you've looked for diversity, and that might be just an early takeaway that people watching can looking for different perspectives other than your own as you assemble and build that team. And then I think you also mentioned just now, you said you had a team member that, maybe it started off as a good fit in a certain capacity, but over time you're kind of always managing and assessing, and maybe there's a better fit elsewhere within the team.
Well, we had two people that were doing the same job. Then when we merged, one had to do it and one didn't do it.
Gotcha.
So she got moved out. But then when that other person left, it was, you know what, I think you're better there. But I think the important thing, and I noticed this when we were hiring for some new team members, some of my younger team member staff was interviewing, and, I think they wanted somebody that they could hang out with and enjoy too, right? I mean, that's culture fits. It can't be underestimated.
Absolutely.
So I think first and foremost, we hire for culture. We want to make sure, and they had this really funny question. They would ask, are you willing to share your food? Which I always thought was a little bit of, especially with COVID. It's like, well, I don't know if people want to share their food, but and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's usually not the question. It's how you answer the question.
Yeah.
It's not the answer to the question. It's how you answer. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. But
I certainly do. I think that answer that you just gave really kind of speaks to almost like the intersection between the two focuses that we wanted to look at today is finding the right people, and then also building that culture. It might be more challenging to build the culture if you don't have the right elements, the right raw materials to work with. And it sounds like the raw materials that you need are people who are the right fit to begin with.
yeah, I mean, in our business, we're a team. And, you're going to interact with your colleagues. You're going to support. You're going to need something from them. They're going to need something from you. It's not a job where you come in, turn your computer on, and type away and walk away. I mean, it is a very engaging environment. It requires us to be in person. It requires us to be interacting out with the community. So culture becomes a very important piece because, there are different types of people. And I think what I've learned through my career is that, how someone grew up, what the dynamics of their family were, those things live with them. And trust is really, really important. You've got to be able to trust your colleagues. You've got to be able to disagree in a constructive way, and you've got to have an environment where I don't want everyone to say yes, you're right, Jen. I want people to challenge me if they don't think that something's a good idea. I want them to feel comfortable enough to say, I don't think that's the right thing to do.
So maybe one of the things that we look at is, as you're very accomplished in your career. That much is obvious. And, one of the things that sometimes we'll see, and this is, almost irrespective of industry or company, is maybe the higher that folks go, the less willing people are to say no. And that could be a challenge that you may have faced, just to essentially to encourage your team to diplomatically, professionally, and doing it the right way, but to challenge at times.
Yeah, and I think it's really on leadership to create that environment of trust, which is not always easy, but an environment of trust, an environment of vulnerability, an environment of openness where people feel that they can share that they can disagree with the CEO. And oftentimes, I think that I want people to give their ideas, and I really want to empower my team to do the work, and for me to give a blessing over it. And there are times when maybe they don't have the expertise or experience or know-how to get there, and they can enlist help from the group to do that. But I think that trust, there's a book, it's the Them Book of Trust. It's really good, and there's also the 5 Dysfunctions of Team. And both those books are really helpful because trust is the number one thing. Yeah. If you don't have trust, then people they're not going to disagree with you. They're not going to feel vulnerable. They're not going to share their ideas. And I had an employee who was brand new. We were talking about our annual meeting, and I was like, what else are we forgetting? And he's like, what about photography? And I was just like, yeah, absolutely. Why didn't we think about this? And if he hadn't said that, I was like, we would have had no pictures at the event. And there were so many other things to check off, but I was like, thank you for bringing that up.
You were receptive to a new idea, though. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it, too. So, first you want to have that, as we're building this team, we want to put the right pieces in place that are going to be a good fit. And we're going to look for those good fits from a hiring, perspective. But then also we want to create this culture, and, Lord knows that's the challenge to do that on a day-to-day basis, where you essentially, we can all challenge each other professionally and diplomatically and all of those things, but we're also receptive to new ideas, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had a lot of experience with that throughout, your career. One of the things that I know we talked about, offline and before this was, it's not just, the company. It's not just, internal employees. And I think that's a big takeaway, for our audience is, you're not just building a team at your company. I think you mentioned that, right? Mm-hmm. You want to...
Yeah, so in our profession, when we're recruiting a project, the primary funding that we get is from our cities in our county and our towns. I have 4, so, but they invest in us. They don't have their own economic development person on their staff. And we are regularly interacting with their planning department, the town or county manager. We're interacting with the client and being a liaison, if you will, but the project depends on us. So it not only depends, it's even more essential that my team is a team, because where one person, stops, someone else starts. And there has to be a continuum between our conversations and the information that we're sharing with others. And they've got a lot of what we do is problem solving, whether it be a project that's looking to come, or an existing industry, or just a issue, and trying to figure out how to solve that problem. And a lot of times it's a problem we've never dealt with before.
First time.
Yeah. And so there's no roadmap, there's no book. There's no guidelines. And so sometimes it's, hey, Chad, what do you think? How would you approach this? And then we discuss it, and then he has some insights that I wouldn't have considered. And then we're able to figure out how to approach it. So, but I think also in our world, we work with our schools, we work with our community college, we work with the workforce board, our chambers, and when we're trying to move community initiatives forward, we don't control those. We don't control what career pathways are in the schools or what kind of apprenticeship efforts are being done. That takes the companies wanting to do that. That takes the schools promoting it. Our role is to amplify that and get everybody rowing in the same direction.
So if I'm getting some takeaways here, what has helped you be successful with your position and your roles in economic development as, really a field is recognizing that with your team, your internal team, it starts there.
It starts there.
You got to have a solid base to work upon.
Yeah.
Then once you have that, then it also goes to your mindset for how you approach everybody outside of that.
Yeah.
So you're getting that solid base, then you're going into the world.
Yeah.
And in the world, you realize and recognize that you don't have control over everything, but having that proper mindset and looking at situations as individuals, as organizations, as you're interacting with and interfacing with, that those interactions are team building and are opportunities for you to team build with the community so that it's an extension of what you're doing with your team, and then, kind of flip side, you're an extension of the community.
Yeah, so a lot of it is if you're trying to move a community initiative forward, if you just go out and do it, it's not a community initiative. You can do that, but you need to get the buy-in from industry, from the schools, from your leadership.
And let's talk about that buy-in.
Buy-in.
How hard is it to get buy-in?
It's not
sometimes?
easy. And the reason why, again, is because we're born with our biases or the way we were raised or our perceptions or, we live in this world and this is how we see things or these are our goals and these are the things that we're focused on. When you are talking about community initiatives, each of those people have a piece of what they're trying to do and why we're all trying to row in the same directions. But nobody's piece is bigger than anybody else's. But when if you're trying to achieve this, then your goal is going to be the most important thing that we have to achieve. And so respecting that that's important, but also helping people to understand that everybody else's thing is also important. That's and also allowing industry to step outside of what they do on a day-to-day basis, making a widget, to suddenly put themselves in the shoes of what the person at the school has to deal with and how their world looks. We do that day in, day out. That's how you build consensus. And you start to get people to see different perspectives, and then they become your ambassadors.
Yeah.
They can then say, hey, I feel like I know the school a little bit better, or hey, I feel like I know what the business is feeling a little bit better. And then when you're trying to get consensus around something, you've got people to step out of their box into the bigger box, I guess, and start to see, okay, this is where we want to go.
Yeah.
It's everyone's important.
And directional, like thinking directionally, thinking almost long term. This is not going to happen overnight.
No.
Anything regarding team building stuff, sweeping initiatives with your team, your internal team as well as with the community. Thinking about from as you're approaching the community and you're starting to get that buy-in that we're talking about. We start to look at when we've achieved little or big milestones. How do we celebrate that, whether that's on your team or in the community?
So I think, we we celebrate as much as we can, and it can be little things like, hey, let's get dessert because we want a project tonight, or we have a team chat through text, and we just have like little nuanced jokes or memes or things like that. And I think I think those things are, underrated. I just think that those small things are really what makes the difference. It's but I think with our community, it's celebrating through social media, recognizing people. It's recognizing in our world, even in economic development, as chair of the Charlotte Regional Alliance. I try to cheerlead my neighboring counties when they have a win, or personally, or from a company recruitment standpoint. I want to celebrate them because they're part of the region. It may not be my win, but it's a win for the region. And as chair of the region, as part of the Regional Alliance, I think it's important that we recognize people when they have wins. And I think it goes a long way. I know when people recognize me, I have, when I won the award for Most Admired CEO, I got some personal notes in the mail, and it made me feel good that people recognized that.
Can't have haters in the house.
No, but I mean, it takes. I think we've lost that a little bit. The handwritten note is underestimated. But even if you do that for your employee, hey, just want to congratulate you, even on their personal life wins.
I think that's great. I think it's great because it gets to mindset once again. And it's like as you're approaching your team, as you're approaching managing your team, running your team, hiring for your team, having that mindset to create that culture, not just for the company that you work for or that you own, but also in the community. You mentioned something really big. You said, there's other communities, there's other counties that, that have stuff going on too. And I think not everybody has the perfect mindset in terms of this, which is why this is a topic for us to begin with. But I could imagine a world where maybe in a different state, other sets of counties, they don't maybe see things the way that maybe in North Carolina everybody plays nicely in the sand and looks at things very positively. I think that's a really nice mindset to have because, like you said, other counties, if they have wins, they have things going on, that brings more back to NC in general. People move around and businesses move around and there's a lot going on there. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, well, and I think the Charlotte Alliance is a good example. Even Iredell County Economic Development is a good example. I mean, we convene stakeholders from a lot of different places that creates community. And we have a purpose in what we're trying to do, and people believe in that, but they also get benefit from being part of that group. And I get benefit in being part of the Charlotte Regional Alliance. I learned from the other practitioners in economic development. I mean, some of the folks have been there for a really long time, and they've been in this region for a long time, and they've dealt with things that maybe I'm just starting to deal with, and vice versa. And we'll call each other and say, hey, do you have an employee handbook, and or do you have an incentive policy for industrial development, and how did you go about that, or how do you, I mean, all these different things.
Resources.
Yeah, and there again, there's no rule book of how to do something. It's learning from other people and being able to lean on them. And then I think from a marketing standpoint, we're better if we market as a region than if I market Iredell just as Iredell. Because where is Iredell? People know Mooresville or Statesville. Counties aren't necessarily known by their names. It's the regions that people know. And we're part of the Charlotte region, and we're very proud of that.
Yeah, I could see a lot of takeaways that, because I know that people are listening. They could be from so many different groups. They may be in the recruiting space, like Search
Sure.
Solution Group. They may be in the economic development space, or they may be in manufacturing. They could be in accounting. And I think one of the takeaways that I'm seeing is that you want to really like see if there's a like teams within a team. Like if that's might be a good way to look at it. Like you have your team of folks that you
Staff.
work with, your staff, but then there's a larger team, and I just really want to kind of just to drive that home, that if you can find the larger team and how to interface with them, you may be able to win more, right?
Yeah, and I think some of the best business development people are some of the best employees or workers or professionals or leaders are people who are always thinking about, hey, I heard someone say XYZ and they're looking for this.
Absolutely.
And then, 2 weeks later, you come across that something and you call them and you say, hey, I know you were thinking about this. It doesn't have any benefit to that person.
Yeah. Moving your organization forward is really like long-term initiatives. So I'm curious, from a team building standpoint, and also just organizationally, like what initiatives are you guys working on? What's something cool, something big that really pushes that organization forward? Iredell County, like what are you working on?
Yeah, so we have a workforce initiative called Iredell Ready. So we were talking about stakeholder engagement. This is a big one for us. Our 2 public school systems, our community college, our workforce development board, our chamber, us, came together and said, you know what, we have so many great programs that are out there that are available for residents and students and businesses, but we're just not working well together to connect the dots. It feels clunky. And so, so we did a SWOT analysis. We came together and sort of determined what we were doing, and then what was the missing piece. And it really felt like marketing was the missing piece, alignment, engagement. And so we developed a proposal. The 2 school systems, our community college, us, funded it initially. And then we went to the county and asked for matching funds. And so we have $750,000 in funding over 3 years. And we have a program of work to launch a website, social media channels. We've been working. Our chamber's been leading an education workforce group to really deploy, develop career fairs, to organize apprenticeship programs, to do videos. So it's like every partner took a little piece of what they do best.
Yeah.
And have owned. And as a collaborative, we're killing it. And an example of this, of a value add, is we had a new business that just recently moved to Iredell Jet East. They're creating 250 jobs, airplane mechanics. We don't have an airplane mechanic program in our schools or our community college, and we have to fill 250 jobs with this company.
Yeah.
So we went in and we met with the company, and they said, we went with all of our partners, and we said, here's everyone, tell us what you need right now, tell us what you're going to need to help recruit and hire, retain and train, and then pipeline development, like the long-term stuff. And they have since created a program with our school system to develop a career pathway and the community college. And they were grateful because the fact that we all came in as a collaborative to address their need.
Team approach.
Yeah, without it being one-off meetings, which would have taken, who knows how long, but that we all got to hear from them what their needs were, and then customize a response to them and help accelerate their connection to the community. That's the power of what we are able to do as an economic development organization, as a community, and the power of being a team.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys took like a consultative sales approach to it, like to figure out what their needs were.
Yeah.
And then you took this team approach to it as well. So it
Yeah.
was easy for them to say yes because you understood their needs and their pains. And then you together made it so easy to be like on a one unified front and had that conversation.
Yeah.
Dialogue.
And the awesome thing is they're a testimonial for us on how our community is responsive to help them be successful, which is the best thing for me. When I'm out trying to recruit other companies to move to Iredell County. That's not why we did it, but I now have a testimonial of an existing company that can say, look at what they did for us, and we can do it again, and I have the trust of all these partners that they're going to deliver on what they said they're going to do, because we've been working together on this initiative for some time, and we're all rowing in the same direction. So we're getting ready to launch a website in September. It'll be iredellready.com, and it'll help students navigate career pathways, apprenticeship programs, internships. It'll help residents if they want to pivot to a new career, what that looks like, what the path is to get there, what kind of pay those jobs are, and who those employers are in our local community. And it'll help businesses navigate what the programs are, like apprenticeship programs or the things that Jetties took advantage of, that they can take advantage of. So it's consolidating it all into one place so that we can talk to all of our audiences.
That sounds really valuable, and to be honest, I think that type of thing, that like a one page, like a website that serves as a compendium for everything you might need in a various county that should exist in like every county in America.
It should, and I think well, I will give shout out to My Future NC. They are an initiative. They are a nonprofit that is focused on creating 2 million credentialed or graduates for the labor force in North Carolina by 2030. And they are working with communities across the state to do this, including they've helped us. But I think, every community has their own challenges. What we found in Iredell is that we had a lot of stuff already in place. We just had to amplify it. Other places, they don't have all the things in place. They have to develop the programs. They've got to be doing the outreach. They've got to be, creating career pathways. Yeah. We have all of that. Our biggest challenge is connecting people. And so I think that's the thing. That's the other thing is sometimes you got to look at your community and figure out what you need to do for your community, not necessarily replicate everything that somebody else is doing, because you may not need to be doing that. Your problem is different, Yeah. But I don't think we would have realized that if we hadn't come together, done a SWOT analysis, and everybody acknowledged that this is a problem. The school's acknowledging that maybe we're not doing the best job of communicating, which takes a little bit of humility, sometimes for people to say, we need you, we need this, and we're not that good at that. And if people are able to do that, then you can solve the problem by finding the solution to fix it.
Yeah, but you've created that dialogue, and you've also created that level of trust where you're there for them, so they feel comfortable over time to reach out and say, hey, I need a little of this, need a little of that. You've created that relationship with them.
And it's not been easy. I mean, always. I mean, I think everybody wished it was up a year ago. But you also have to educate people on what goes into designing a logo and the importance of brand guidelines and, getting it right. Because we could do it fast, but if it's not a product of us, meaning all of us, and we don't all contribute to it, and it's what I like, but you don't like it, then you're not going to use it. You're not going to be behind it. So again, going back to the teams, it's important that you get consensus building. And sometimes you go through the exercise, and I had to explain this to our marketing firm. They were doing a workshop. They're like, I don't know if we really need to do that. And I said, You don't need to do that for your marketing exercise, but we need to do this so that we can do consensus building. And so there's a two-prong approach as to why we're doing the workshop. There's your things that you want to get out of this, and then there's the group share that needs to go through this process to build consensus.
That's intentionality.
It is intentionality, because you could just check the box and be done with it, but did it really help you achieve what you need to achieve? And it's interesting, because in retrospect, the marketing firm has said, I don't think they fully saw it, because they didn't know what we were seeing, right? And they were thinking about what they needed for their effort. But I think in the end, as they've grown with us, they've started to understand, our culture and what we were trying to build, and
Which goes back to what we've been talking about
Yeah.
this whole time, which is creating that team culture and finding the right partners for people who will, and companies who will, and teams that will jive with what you're being intentional in building.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do next is, as we close out this episode, is there a way that people listening can connect with you a little bit further to take that next step? If maybe they're coming to Iredell County, they want to bring jobs to Iredell County. Like, how can people connect with you in Iredell County?
Yeah, so couple different ways. I'm on LinkedIn, so you certainly can learn more about me there. Our website, IredellEDC.com, that's our main website. So if you want to learn about Iredell County and where we are and what we have to offer, who our industries are, that's or my team. Connect with my team. And then the Iredell Ready initiative, IredellReady.com is our website for our workforce initiative. We do have a landing page live, so you can learn a little bit about it, and then in September we will launch. And then I think probably the best way is follow us on social media. So Iredell EDC and Iredell Ready, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Yeah, and that's great. And I will definitely link all of the links below
Yeah.
in the comments and all that kind of stuff, and in the bio and all the places. We'll make sure that we're super linked up and
Sure.
make it easy for people. The website looks beautiful. I had a chance to look at
Thank
it.
you.
But thank you so much, Jen, for being part of this today and for joining us for this episode of Building Better Teams. I certainly took away a couple nuggets, and I look
Good.
forward to everybody else letting us know in the comments if you thought that this was helpful, and if you got some from Jen's expertise. Definitely reach out to Jen. Definitely reach out to Iredell County, and if you got some jobs to bring to Iredell County, give these guys a shout. I guess we'll close it here, and thank
Okay.
you once again. Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you. I appreciate it.